Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is our first online class of the laws of davening, of prayer. This is a class that we used to learn in the Kollel of Manalapan on Wednesday nights, and we'll continue where we left off since COVID happened and we're not having that class. But we'll learn it online and hopefully learn a lot about the laws of prayer and also improve how we pray and the seriousness of how we take prayer. The Gemara says that davening prayer is something which stands at the pinnacle of the world, is a very holy thing, but unfortunately many of us don't treat it seriously. We rush through our prayers and we don't realize the effect that it could have by reaching out to the Almighty, and that really He is the source of everything and of our success. So we are studying the laws of prayer. We're going to start out about not interrupting when you're davening. So there are many different parts of the prayer service, but the part we're going to be focusing on is Shmona Esrei, the silent Amida, which is the main focus of every Jewish prayer service. There are 19 blessings that we say totally quiet. We say it's softly to ourselves, but it's independent. And the words were set by the men of the Great Assembly, many of whom were prophets, and each word has a very profound spiritual effect on the spiritual world and on our lives. So one thing when we're praying, which we often don't realize, is that we're speaking to the King of Kings, we're speaking to God. So the way we would speak to a regular human king, if we were to meet him, we would dress a certain way, we would act a certain way, and we for sure wouldn't interrupt our audience with a regular human king for something else. There's a story in the Gemara that's told of a person, a holy man who was praying, and a minister came by, and this holy man didn't interrupt his prayers. And after he finished, the minister said, "Why didn't you stop? I could have killed you. Back in the day, a king or an important person could kill you if you don't listen to them, or if you don't treat them, if you don't say hello to them respectfully." So he said that if you were speaking in front of a regular human king and someone, would you interrupt for anything? He said, "Of course not." So he says, "I'm speaking to the King of Kings. Should I interrupt to greet you?" And the minister said, "You're right." And he spared him. So we're going to learn about... sorry, there's really loud birds outside for some reason. Okay. We're going to learn about the laws, the specific laws about not interrupting during the Shmona Esrei, the silent prayer. And what these laws should teach us is how serious we have to take the Shmona Esrei. When we're davening, we're praying, we have to realize that we're literally speaking to God. We're speaking to the King of Kings, and we should comport ourselves accordingly. And based on that, we'll learn when one can interrupt, when one can't interrupt. So hopefully we can learn one halacha a day. We're using the Mishnah Berurah, which is the commentary written by the Chafetz Chaim on Orach Chaim, on the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law. So first we'll read the Shulchan Aruch, and then we'll read the Mishnah Berurah. So the Shulchan Aruch says, we're in 104.1, Kuf Dalet Aleph, Lo yafsik b'tfilaso, va'afilu melech Yisrael, shol b'shlomo lo yishivenu. A person should not interrupt his davening, even if a Jewish king asks how he's doing. So you're davening and King David comes up to you and says, "Hi, how are you?" You don't stop davening, because you're speaking to God. You shouldn't interrupt. Aval. Melech Oivei Gelulim, but an idolatrous king, what do? Im efshelo lekatzer, dahanu shiomer tchilas habracha v'sofa kodem shegiya elav yikatzer. If you can shorten your prayer, you should do it. Now, how do you shorten your prayer? There are 19 blessings in the Shmona Esrei. So what you would do is you would say the first 3 and the last 3 completely, and the middle blessings you would omit the middle part of the blessings and just say the first and last lines about. If you want to look, the Sefer Chayei Adam says how to do that exactly, but it's admittedly kind of hard if you don't know how to shorten the blessings. But that's what you should do first. You should shorten the Shmona Esrei if you can. Im I efshar lo sheyita min haderech, yita v'lo yafsik b'dibur. Or im efshar lo sheyita min haderech, yita v'lo yafsik b'dibur. Now, if it's possible to go and move, to walk away, so the king doesn't see you, the non-Jewish king, the idolatrous king, that's what you should do. Without speaking. But if you have to, you can speak. Now we're going to see the reason that one is allowed to interrupt for a non-Jewish king or an idolatrous king is because it was very likely that they could, if you don't respect the king, they would kill you. So we are not obligated to give up our lives to not interrupt the Shemona Esrei prayer. But it is, we see, nevertheless, very important not to interrupt. So let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Excuse me. Lo yafsik, va'afilu remiza ba'al ma'aser. When one's davening Shemona Esrei, it's even prohibited to hint. So if you want to, you obviously can't talk, but you're not even allowed to go and start pointing. That's also not allowed. Right? If you were speaking to the president, you wouldn't do that. However, if your child is with you and he's crying and he's distracting you from davening, then you could hint to him to get him to stop. If that doesn't help, and if hinting to the kid doesn't get him to stop crying, then you can move away. Another case, let's say, very often in synagogues, the cantor, the chazan, will wait to begin the repetition or to say Kaddish until the most distinguished person in the congregation is finished, usually the rabbi or another distinguished guest. So let's say the distinguished person notices they're waiting for him, and he's getting, it makes him feel uncomfortable. So in that case, the distinguished person is allowed to hint to the cantor to continue the prayers. Even in a case where a person is going to lose a lot of money, he's not allowed to interrupt his prayer service, his Shemona Esrei. So this is a common case. Let's say, very often on different holidays, we add different parts into the davening, or maybe we forgot to say something in davening, and we don't know what the halacha is. Do we go back? Do we have to start over again? What do we do? So the Chai Adam writes that if someone is davening and he's not sure what the law is about which prayer to say, he's actually allowed to move and go look up in a book what the law is. Now, are you actually allowed to go ask a rabbi and ask him what the law is? So the Chai Adam isn't sure, but the Mishnah Berurah says it is allowed. So if you're ever davening Shemona Esrei, usually one is not allowed to move at all during Shemona Esrei. One has to stand with his feet together. But if a person is davening Shemona Esrei and he's unsure of what the halacha is, he is allowed to first go to the shelf to look it up in a book, and if not, he can actually ask a rabbi what the law is. Now, if you have an Art Scroll Siddur, it's very convenient because in the back of the book they have many of the common laws of which prayers need to be included and what happens if you forget. So most times if this comes up and you have an Art Scroll Siddur, you can just look in the back and all the laws there are in English. The Mishnah Berurah says any case where you're worried that your life is in danger, you can interrupt your prayer. So again, if you're worried your life's in danger, if you can shorten the Shemona Esrei and be finished quickly, that's the best thing to do. Number 2 is to just move away. And number 3, if you have to talk, you can speak. He cites a question from the Pri Megadim. The Pri Megadim isn't sure why it's an issue to move when you're davening, but it seems like that's the Shulchan Aruch, so just the halachas like we said. So the Mishnah Berurah writes that if it's you have to know, I guess if you're living in medieval England and you're at the times of like Edward I, who's ready to exile all the Jews, and the king passes by, and if you don't greet the king and bow to the king in your middle of Shemona Esrei, and you don't say hello, that he's going to kill you, then you should for sure say hello to the king, and definitely if King Edward says hello to you, you should respond. But even though we have respect for our leaders in the United States, this doesn't really happen with idolatrous kings who will kill us if we don't respond to them. But we're going to learn in subsequent days in other halachas, other dangerous situations. What happens if you're davening Shemona Esrei outside and an animal comes to attack you? Maybe it'll depend on the type of animal and how much danger there is, and that's something, God willing, we will discuss soon. Hope everyone has a beautiful day.